Well, there's a lot to connect today, and I'm going to start with Elon Musk. I've been on his case for a long time because there is a public face that Elon Musk tries to promote, and then there's the actions of Elon Musk, and the two are not the same. And the reason that I start with him today is because he has bought the best part of $3 billion worth of shares in Twitter after criticizing its censorship policy. Apparently, I hear it's got him on the board of directors. Now, this has been largely overwhelmingly welcomed by the alternative media, from what I've seen anyway, in that, oh yeah, Elon Musk is pushing back against censorship. Well, by their actions you shall know them. And while Musk says a few of the right things and positions himself as a kind of rebel, there's a few things to consider. One, he is apparently, though it seems to be changing every now and again, but he's apparently officially the world's richest man. He's not, because people in the shadows are far richer than him, but officially on the surface, he's the world's richest man. So you don't become, this is as clear as you can possibly get, you don't become the world's richest man by taking on the cult. You become the world's richest man, like in the interchangeables, Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, by serving the interests of the global cult. That's how it happens. And then, which seems to be ignored by so much of the alternative media that is welcoming this Twitter move, is that everything that Elon Musk is involved in is advancing the agenda, not just advancing the agenda, but is massively central to the cult agenda. So he's fronting up this SpaceX operation, which is putting thousands and thousands of low-orbit satellites up there to beam 5G and Wi-Fi in general at the Earth to create this cloud, this smart grid cloud to which humans are supposed to be connected via AI. Without what he's doing, that could not happen. He's saying some years ago now that AI could be the end of humanity. Well, as we know it, absolutely. But then starts a company called Neuralink to connect the human brain to computers, and he's been practicing on monkeys to do that. But what he's doing, of course, is light years behind what they can do in the underground bases. And then he, of course, fronts up Tesla. Electric cars, driverless cars, absolutely central to the cult agenda, to control travel, to control through the computer on the car where you can and cannot go. And all justified in terms of the electric cars by a human-caused climate change that's not actually happening. So when he talks about defending free speech, why would he genuinely want to protect free speech when destroying it is the agenda of the cult, which his companies, I say his companies, the companies he fronts, massively serves? You know, these are the questions that people need to ask, because one of the greatest ways of manipulating perception And to get people to support you is to tell them what they want to hear. In terms of, the control of the news, this is a classic. BBC correspondent Fixer, shaping Ukraine war coverage, is PR operative involved in war messaging tool. BBC reports on the suspicious destruction of a theater in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. And these reports were co-authored by a Ukrainian PR agent tied to a firm at the forefront of her country's information warfare efforts. So before serving as a fixer and reporter for the BBC in Ukraine, Orisia Kimiak handled PR for a startup called Reface, which created what the Washington Post called a reality-distorting app, now serving as a kind of Ukrainian war messaging tool. So they have a Ukrainian narrative insider, the BBC, co-authoring reports on what's happening in Ukraine. And, one of the things about this theater that was supposed to have been bombed is in this other story where they're quoting Ukrainians. One of the things they're saying is actually this was not done by Russians. It was done by this Nazi Azov battalion. But like I say, what can you believe coming out of these things now? I mean, you can't believe anything when there's not a war. When there is a war, I mean, it's impossible to see the wood for the trees in terms of the lies and what have you. The humdinger, I'll finish on this one. The humdinger of the week is this. Swedish folk band cancelled because they play a Russian musical instrument. A Swedish folk band was banned from performing at a benefit concert to support Ukraine because they play a Russian musical instrument, with outraged critics claiming that the balalaika is that how you pronounce that, balalaika? Was as bad as displaying a Nazi swastika. Now, this is plumbing the very depths of human potential for complete insanity. This is Sodra Bergen's Balayakor, a band first formed in 1969, been scheduled to play a charity concert to support Ukraine in the Swedish city of Uppsala. However, their appearance was cancelled after bedwetting morons complained that the balalaika, a three-stringed musical instrument with a characteristic triangular wooden body, was a national symbol of Russia. And when you have Siberian cats being banned from appearing in international cat competitions, and a prize-winning Russian tree being stripped of its title, you know that you are living in a lunatic asylum with the greatest respect to lunatics. And it's worth acknowledging how grateful we are. And those watching this show, by definition, will be included in this. How grateful we are that we are still sane. We are still an island of sanity in this ocean of madness. One of the things that they are targeting is anything that is a pillar of Western society, and also anything that draws people together, whether you agree with what draws them together or not. They don't want people coming together. And they certainly don't want any concept at all of something more than what you see, touch, and taste. Call it God, I call it infinite awareness, whatever. And so it's an opinion editorial in the New York Times, totally cult-owned, the New York Times, which came out on the Easter weekend. Let's get rid of God. New York Times published an op-ed that proposes eliminating belief in God as one of the holiest weekends of the year begins, titled, "In this time of war, I propose we give up God." The article claims that God is responsible for war and violence and for oppression and suffering, and suggests that people stop teaching children about him. This guy called Shalom Auslander, who is disillusioned about his upbringing in a religious Jewish community in New York. But the name, you call it what you like. There is a greater force, a greater unity of which we're all part. God, I mean, the Christian belief that God's out there and we're down here. I don't accept that. We're expressions of the same consciousness, just in different states of awareness. But the whole thrust of the control system is to get people to focus and be aware of only this reality, and to think that they are isolated, cosmic kind of accidents with no greater self. And so this is why we have to be very careful what we wish for, because a lot people who are anti-religion, and I think religion has done a lot of terrible things, continues to do so, but it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because you can say, oh yeah, religion and God, like this guy, he relates the two. Well, is it God, or is it the human interpretation of God and the belief system around their God that causes all these horrors that he's talking about? And while I don't agree with the Christian version of God and the Muslim version of God, it still represents that there's something greater. What they want to do is shut that down in any form whatsoever, so that this world, which they control or seek to control in its entirety, can be the only God, if you like, the only force that humans worship. Is that Darth Vader? Israeli TV channel, unwittingly, runs live footage from Ukraine showing a crash-landed TIE fighter from Star Wars. The clip shows stormtroopers standing beside the Imperial aircraft on a snowy road. An investigation at Channel 13 has been launched, and the editor has been suspended after the video was aired during a montage of destruction in Ukraine. The clip was originally an advert produced by Disney and Lucasfilm in 2014 to promote a new Star Wars channel on Sky Deutschland. It shows the stormtroopers surveying the crashed starfighter on a German autobahn while cars zoom past. So here's the video, and we've frozen the end of it where the stormtroopers appear. What a joke.
קילומטרים מתקרבת לקייב, ובארצות הברית מזהירים כי מדובר בנחיל מכריע שיפרוץ לבירה תוך 3 ימים. שיחות השלום החלו אתמול בבלרוס, אבל ההסכמות כלשהן עדיין נראות רחוקות. באוקראינה טוענים כי רוסיה...
So that's the scale of deceit that we are dealing with. Ukraine wants Russian climbers banned from Himalayas. This is how childish it all gets. The request was ignored, with Nepal saying its mountains are global assets. So they wanted to get rid or ban just Russian people of any background from climbing the Himalayas because Ukraine demands it. I'm getting sick of Ukraine, frankly. Not the population that actually suffer the consequences, the bloody government and Zelensky. Gee whiz. The arrogance that they are increasingly showing, the whole world must be focused on them. Just talk, sort it out. We don't want World War III, thank you. I don't think that'd be a very good idea. And then we've got Zurich Insurance Group dropping the letter Z over fears of Russian connection. Oh, dear. Take me home, mother. It's mad down here. End of the line. Vintage train journeys at risk as coal supply falls or fails. The problem is that steam trains consume coal, an energy source now vilified for being a major source of greenhouse gases. In its attempt to reach net zero emissions, Britain has been closing down its coal mines. One in near Merthyr Tydfil in Wales, for people around the world, was the last to supply heritage rail lines with lumped coal, but has now halted its supply before its total closure later this year. And what's happening now is that these steam trains run on coal, but they're struggling to find coal. They're looking at Poland, they're looking at Australia and Colombia. They've been suggested as possibilities. And they are extremely popular. They get very large numbers of visitors. I go to them whenever I've got time, whenever I'm near one. But they are preserving a heritage. They are preserving a culture. The very culture and history that the cult wants to destroy. And that is a benefit offshoot of what's happening with the climate change hoax, which means those consequences for steam lines. The Pentagon has outlined equity priorities. The US Department of Defense vows to change procurement, education, healthcare, and even AI to fit race and gender identity. And the Chinese government and the Chinese military must be in hysterics. Police are being told in Britain that they have to use gender-neutral forms of address instead of what they've used before. They can't call people sir or madam and have to use gender-neutral forms of address. Under the heading, How to Be LGBT plus Friendly, this document says, when greeting others, avoid ladies, gentlemen, mom, sir, girls, guys. And in one training, wait for bloody this. In one training exercise, police officers were asked to talk about their own partners without using gendered terminology such as husband, wife, he or she. Police officers, what are you doing? You're being psychologically manipulated in the same way that kids are by those lunatics. just refuse to do it. All those that don't want to do it, refuse to do it, and you'll realize how many don't want to do it. But no, got to do what authority says. The House of Lords in Britain, they've been told to stop using offensive terms like man-made and manpower. They've been given an inclusive language guide. Modern feminism, because they're targeting the women now as well as the men, is transphobic, racist, and focuses on straight, white, middle-class women, pupils were told, in Forum at $22,000 a year Highgate School. Because these private schools, they're really big time into all this. Apple includes pregnant man emoji in latest software update. Unbelievable. The Ukraine situation goes on. Is Russia the real target of Western sanctions? Soaring oil prices, energy and food crises on the horizon. Is it possible the real target of this economic war is us? And that is precisely what it is. The invasion of Ukraine, in its bigger picture, is to target the West, to target the Western economy, to drive energy prices, thus the price of everything, through the stratosphere to dismantle the economy of the West. And that's why these sanctions, as they're called, on Russia have proved to be the economic equivalent by the West of shooting itself in both feet with both barrels. And it points out, this article, that it has been possible in other times to specifically target economies to make them collapse. But that's not what is happening with Russia in the way these sanctions are being imposed. And in fact, it's having the effect on the West that it's supposed to have on Russia, and that is by design. So we get this story. Russian ruble has recovered all post-sanctions losses and is now trading higher than before the war. Less than 1 week after Joe Biden claimed his unprecedented sanctions had reduced the ruble to rubble, Russia's currency has recovered all its losses and is now trading higher than before the war began. Putin took aggressive measures to rescue the ruble from demanding foreign nations pay for Russian oil in rubles to pegging the currency to gold. And while Europe is committing suicide or being suicided, it's more to the point, China and India are refusing to go along with America's regime, as it says here, bullshit. I'll finish on this one. And it kind of pulls everything together. These are people that are very much, we must save the world from climate change. We must do this about COVID. We must have the pronouns, all that stuff. And I'm talking about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Meghan Markle's £10,000 a day wardrobe. Duchess wore £38,000 worth of new clothes during a 3-day Invictus Games trip, including a £12,800 Cartier necklace and a $3,200 Valentino dress, as well as favorites like Diana's watch. So these people, they kind of care about the poor and they care about justice and what have you. And yet they are just classic narcissistic people that live off the system and live off the titles that they have and serve the cult by promoting the agenda of the cult known as woke. And it says at the bottom of this story, and I do apologize, you're going to be very disappointed. It says here, unfortunately, Meghan's boucle jacket, whatever the bloody hell that is no longer available to buy. God, I bet you're absolutely gutted. But fortunately, the high street and high end have come through with some alternatives that will do the job just as nicely. Simply click through our carousel to bag your own version and channel your inner Meghan Markle. Channel your narcissism. Oh dear. Unbelievable. Did people call people by their title and bow to these people? It's unbelievable, really. Bowing to the Queen and stuff like that. It's just incredible. And it's not just ludicrous, it's indicative of the whole way the system works. That they up there, we down here. I think not.